tussling with our emotions and being in conflict with what is coming up for you is part of the problem, like resisting the actual feelings that you have.
Yes.
How do you separate, though, what your son or daughter or significant other is dealing with and needs to deal with and feel for themselves and what you need to deal with for yourself?
Yeah.
Because for me, I'll just explain in case it's helpful to you listening. When one of our kids is struggling with anxiety, which all three of them have in various levels throughout their life, or my husband struggling with depression, the emotions that come up for me are so
hellish.
uncomfortable that the way that I would normally deal with them, Susan, is first try to swoop in and remove all the discomfort from my kids. Okay, I'll take care of it. I'll get you the therapist. We're going to talk about this. You're going to be okay, because I can't deal with my own emotions. And then as soon as I have just barfed all that out at somebody, because I'm going to fix it, because I don't want to feel what I'm feeling, because it scares me to death that you're like anxious, because I love you and I don't want you to be in pain, and now I'm upset about it. Then I go pour a drink, because I don't want to feel those things.
Yes, I love that question. And by separation, we don't mean disengagement. By separation, we don't mean I don't care about you, okay?
Right.
By separation, what we mean is healthy levels of boundaries. Boundaries don't mean that I remove my compassion. Boundaries with my child that basically say, I am safe as a person, and you, my beautiful child, are safe as a person, because I'm not going to let your anxiety derail me and make us both unsafe. Okay. In other words, because it's a really important thing. So what are we doing when we're setting a boundary? You are wanting to see your child's need, to recognize that need and to state that need. I can see that you need me right now while I'm cooking dinner. So we want to state the need.
Okay.
We want to, number two, empathize. Okay. I love you. I care about you. I empathize with you. And I can see that what you're going through is really tough right now. Okay. So we're doing all of this, need, empathy. And third is we are stating what we can and cannot do. I can't deal with this now. I'm cooking dinner. Can we have this conversation in an hour? Now, in that way, you're not being inhuman. You're not walking away from your compassion. What you're doing is you're coupling your compassion with a strong sense of groundedness in yourself and your ability to set boundaries. So separation is not about distance or I don't care, but it is the most important skill set. What I found in my work is that usually when people have these difficult emotions, and you captured this so beautifully in the example that you gave, is often what we have is one of two reactions, and people sometimes jump from one to the next. The first is what I call bottling difficult emotions. Bottling difficult emotions is when we experience these emotions, but we start engaging in emotional suppression. We can do it with ourselves, we can do it with others. Ignoring and going and watching Netflix, so I don't need to deal with it, is an example of bottling. Doing that once is fine, but when it becomes a default coping strategy, you aren't going to be effective in the world at all. So bottling is this idea of suppressing difficult emotions, pushing it aside in myself, pushing it aside in others, forced positivity, trying to fix, trying to say to someone, don't worry, it'll be okay. Sometimes, leaders will say, when people are going through difficult situations at work, leaders will say something like, it doesn't matter, everything will be okay, like everything will be fine. And I'm like, that is not leadership. That is what we call denial. Forced positivity is not leadership. Forced positivity is denial. It's denial that's like wrapped up in rainbows and sparkles.
So what do you do?
But it's denial.
If you're like worried though, like you've got somebody that, you know what denial. I mean, that's really struggling.
And then the opposite is brooding. And brooding is where we like, this feels terrible. This feels so difficult. We get stuck in our difficult emotion. So what we want to do with our difficult emotions to create that distance is, firstly, this gentle acceptance that I spoke about. Secondly is when we start getting granular with our emotions, we are now not in the space of like, oh, everything's stressful and my whole family life is, up the creek.
Right.
Instead, what we're doing is we're saying like, I'm feeling disappointed because this is hard.
Right.
Okay. And just that starts to create a sense of liberation in ourselves and a sense of separation. Another thing, and this I think is one of the most powerful things that we need to recognize, I own my emotions. My emotions don't own me.
I mean, that sounds great. I don't know that I feel that way some days.
So let's just think about our language.
Okay.
All right. I am sad. What are we saying when we say I'm sad? We're saying all of me, 100% of me.
Oh, versus I feel sad.
Versus I'm noticing that I'm feeling sad. When we say I feel sad, when we say I feel angry, what we are literally doing is saying I am all of me is defined by the sadness. And Mel, the metaphor that I use sometimes is, imagine there's a cloud in the sky. When you say, I am sad, I am angry, I'm a bad parent. Okay. What we are doing is we are almost being the cloud. I am all of me is that cloud. But when we instead start noticing our thoughts, our emotions, and our stories for what they are, I'm noticing that I'm feeling grieving about what I'm seeing in my child. I'm noticing my sense of disappointment that I need to go it alone here. Okay, that I'm the person that's holding the family together. Okay. I'm noticing a story, which is that I needed to be a perfect parent here. Okay. So when we move away from I'm a bad parent into I'm noticing my thoughts, emotions, and stories for what they are, which is their thoughts, their emotions, their stories, they're parts of us. They're not all of us. We've also got our wisdom, we've got our values, we've got our intentions, we've got our wants, our dreams. So we need to create that separation. And a really powerful way of doing that is using this linguistic separation. Linguistic separation, instead of I am sad, I'm noticing that I'm feeling sad. What you're doing here is you are not the cloud. You are the whole damn sky. You are powerful enough to experience all of your emotions and then to choose who you want to be in that situation.
I want to really drill down into this example a little bit further, because I think what you've just shared is super helpful when you're the one who is getting brought down and overwhelmed by somebody else who's really struggling.
Yeah.
And it's super helpful to see the need to like literally kind of separate a little bit, have some compassion for yourself, use the linguistic separation of I'm noticing this in myself, which even just acknowledging it does that readiness in terms of pointing you in the right direction to know what kind of support you need.
Firstly, we're not trying to sense make with anyone while they're lying on a supermarket floor having a tantrum. Okay.
Yeah.
Like what we know from our work is that the simple presence, the simple willingness of one individual to be human with another individual, to not try to jostle and fix and distract, but simple presence automatically de-escalates those difficult emotions. Okay. So we know that, okay? You can't react with intentionality when you are reacting. In other words, when you're being reactive rather than responsive, when we ground it in ourselves, we can respond. We've got our feet on the ground and we are responding. Now, there are a couple of mistakes that people make with this. Okay. The first is, I spoke about brooding earlier, where we get stuck in our difficult emotions. There is something called co-brooding. Co-brooding is when someone's had a really bad day and you come home from work and they come home from work and you have a big fat moan about what's been going on in the day. That's co-brooding. So what we're doing here is we are both now stuck in these difficult emotions. And there's fascinating research on co-brooding. You know, the idea that you go out with your best girlfriend, you have a big fat moan about your father-in-law, and what do? When you leave that restaurant conversation, you love your best friend. You feel better about your best friend. But what is the longer term impact of your behavior on your father-in-law? It actually is worse. So co-brooding is where you both now get stuck in a little vent. And we know that co-brooding and brooding is actually predictive of longer term depression, of longer term anxiety, and it is unhelpful. So this is where this labeling comes in. That's very, very important.
So is it just me, Dr. David, or is everybody a little bit more uneasy or emotional these days?
Absolutely. The world has been changing so quickly, and we as human beings, we're not taught in school the science of how to navigate emotions effectively. And so we come to a changing world that feels out of control.